Well, I would say Happy Ash Wednesday, but I don't think that is the classic greeting for Ash Wednesday. Happy Day of Lamentation and Confession and groveling and throwing ashes all over you and saying, I am just such a sinner. I'm a worm. Well, anyway, we'll talk. We'll talk. Today is Ash Wednesday, and I don't want to make fun of anybody's holidays because, as many Thelemites do, we respect everybody's traditions, but we tweak them and evolve them to mean something for us. I posted a thing about the white ash that is created from when our dust, the dust that's left from us when we cross the abyss, is packed into a pyramid in Binah and stuff like that. But we got a bunch of stuff to do today, and I'm going to hopefully continue to talk about the magic sword. I'll finish off that chapter. But other things are happening in the world, and our friend Monty Farber, posted something today that I shared on my site today that was very interesting astrologically. So I'm going to read that too. You can see the whole thing, including his reference to the book that he's talking about. But this is what Monty told us today, with the world going crazy the way it is. This is in all caps. Stay away from dangerous people, dangerous neighborhoods, and dangerous situations for the next few days. Avoid road rage and any rage and raging people. Now, that may sound like a huge exaggeration and stuff. No. Things are crazy out there. And I think astrologically, this is not a good time to get enmeshed in things like that. But I digress. Big things are going to happen over the next few days. And yes, I know that big things happen every day. But the power grab index is off the charts. Mars exactly conjunct Pluto, which is returning in the USA chart on the 28th degree of Capricorn. And know your limits as you make your base secure. Mercury exactly conjunct Saturn on the 19th degree of Aquarius. And then he has, I got all my brakes replaced. Totally Mercury/Saturn. Get serious, or just sleep through it. Now, I don't often do that, but I was struck by Monty's thing. Scroll down on my site to see his whole posting there, because he's got a new book on Amy's art that you'll want to look into. Okay. It is good, Ash Wednesday. And Constance has a couple things she read to me that I want her to share with you today. But I'm picking up, we're talking about the magic sword, and I'm going to pick up at the last paragraph I left off yesterday. I bought my magic sword at an antique store near my home in Costa Mesa, California. Before you chastise me for being lazy and unmagical, I'd like to share with you the circumstances surrounding its acquisition and what my magic sword means to me, how it qualifies to be my word. Hopefully, the story will give you some idea what these homemade magical weapons are truly about and what you'll need to do to create or earn your own. My sword is a beautiful but modest Masonic Knights Templar ceremonial sword made in the United States sometime between 1893 and 1923. There are thousands of them still cluttering the walls of antique stores and attics all over the world. And if you're lucky, you can probably still find one for yourself for less than $100. I've been shopping for a good ceremonial sword ever since I was made master of Haru Raha Lodge OTO in January of 1978. Not only is a lightweight sword a necessary tool used in all OTO degree initiation ceremonies, but it is also the weapon of the priestess of the Gnostic Mass, the order's publicly celebrated ritual. In other words, both Constance and I need a good sword in the house. I located my sword, the sword of my dreams, at a local antique store. It was a Masonic Templar, Knights Templar commander's sword, in good shape for something at least 80 years old at the time, and adorned with esoteric symbols that are just as appropriate to the ceremonial magician as they are to Freemasonry. It was the perfect length and weight and came with its original scabbard, also beautifully and appropriately adorned. It was reasonably priced, but at the time I didn't have the money to buy it. In fact, I didn't have the money to buy much of anything. Looking back, I'm happy I didn't have the funds to just purchase it when I first saw it in the shop, because if I had just thrown it in my shopping cart, that particular sword might never have gotten itself infused with much magic. But I'll get to that part of the story in a moment. I need to tell you that my magic sword didn't start out as a sword. It was a guitar, a very special guitar. It was a handsome instrument, the finest I'd ever owned. A 1968 C.F. Martin D28. With a butter smooth setup and rich response that was just perfect for my then primitive rhythm accompaniment style. I selected it from out of a dozen high-end guitars I sampled at the Johnny Thompson Music, the legendary store in El Monte, California, that serviced the artists and bands that populated the touring and recording culture of that golden era of popular music. Our producer at Epic Records drove my partner Charlie and me there one afternoon in the early 1970 and told us, pick out whatever you want. I loved that guitar and broke it in writing songs and recording 2 singles, an album, and playing more live performances than my hashish-addled years of sex, drugs, and rock and roll will permit me to remember. A friend and guitar student of mine, who happened to be a master woodworker, begged me to allow him, for an insanely reasonable price, to inlay the neck and headstock with mother of pearl and abalone shell. He adorned the fret markers with generous double triangles of mother of pearl. And at the 12th fret, he placed the Roman numeral 93 in iridescent green, blue, and pink abalone shell. On the headstock he inlaid in abalone shell the name C.F. Martin, which plunged proudly between the two rows of gold Schaller tuning posts. The crowning glory of my sweet Martin was the inlaid Egyptian winged solar disk, centered at the top of the headstock. Every feather a separate iridescent piece of mother of pearl or abalone shell, cut and ground individually at different angle and polished so that it caught and reflected light from a different direction. As the guitar moved under the stage lights, the feathers appeared to flutter and dazzled the eye. Did I say it was a handsome guitar? It was breathtaking. My most precious possession, the apple of my eye and ear. It was coveted by every guitarist who laid his eyes on it. In my mind, that guitar, more than anything else, more than my songs, more than my live performances, more than my own talent, real or imagined, even more than my recording career, defined who and what I was as an artist. It was my Excalibur. But in December of 1978, magic had become my art. I no longer made a living on stage and in the studio. I had over-enjoyed the excesses of an aspiring rock star. I was a married man with a beautiful wife and a little son born in 1972. And despite of the wild and wonderful adventures I had experienced on the road, I really did want to be a good husband and a stable father. The alcohol, the drugs, and the ladies ultimately couldn't compete with the love and warmth of my little family. For several years, after I said goodbye to music, I worked at a string of low-paying technical positions in the medical device manufacturing industry. The jobs barely paid the rent on our little apartment in Costa Mesa, and there was very little left over every month for food. I must confess, the DuQuettes owed our existence to almost supernatural thriftiness of my dear wife, Constance. Christmas that year fell on a Monday. The company I was working for gave us only one day off for the holiday. Management waited till the end of the day on Friday, December 22nd, to announce that regrettably there would be no Christmas bonuses or year-end gifts for the hourly employees. Even though the DuQuettes aren't Christian, our family loves the Christmas season and makes the most of the cultural celebration. That year, Constance has brought home an inexpensive little tree strapped to her bicycle. It was gaily decorated and had been emanating its Jovian perfume in our living room for over a week. A handful of small homemade gifts were already wrapped and under the tree, but the real gift I was planning to get for Constance and little Jean-Paul had yet to be purchased, awaiting the Christmas bonus money, and was not going to come. I felt pretty much like Bob Cratchit in Dickens' A Christmas Carol, faced with the grim project of delivering bad news to his family on Christmas Eve. I sat in my little cubicle at work and wallowed for a few minutes in self-pity. It was not a very dignified attitude for someone who started to identify himself as a serious magician. In fact, I didn't feel much like a magician at all. Poverty had dogged us from the moment I abandoned my recording career in 1972. My real-world jobs to this point had served barely to keep our heads above water. I was hoping that this Christmas would be different, a cheery and festive occasion for Constance and little Jean-Paul, like Christmases my hard-working parents managed to throw for my brother and me in the 1950s. Then it occurred to me that I had one asset, one golden treasure that I might sacrifice on the altar of Christmas to save the day. My Martin. Even without the custom inlay work, it was easily worth $1,000. I didn't, however, have time to find a buyer to give me close to what it was worth. It was too precious an item to pawn for just a few dollars, so I set the insanely low figure of $350, the amount I estimated my bonus would have been, and resolved that if I could immediately get that much money for the instrument, I would sell it and go Christmas shopping. I swung by our apartment after work and picked up my precious D28 and drove directly to Coast Music in Costa Mesa. They knew me there. During our recording years, Charlie and I were local Hollywood recording star celebrities. The owner also knew my guitar and was forever suggesting that I sell it to him. Late in the day, the store was still full of customers, mostly professional musicians shopping for supplies for holiday gigs. The owner was happy to see me and lamented the fact that I hadn't been in for a while. I laid the guitar case on the display case and said flatly, "I'm selling my Martin." He looked surprised and genuinely sad. Still, there was a glint of greed in his eyes. "Are you sure about this?" was his first response. I nodded in the affirmative. He sighed and started to open the case. "Okay, I'll write it up and put it on consignment. What's your asking price?" "I don't want to put it on consignment," I told him. "I want to sell it to you right now for $350 in cash." He looked at me in complete disbelief. He flared his nostrils in a not-so-subtle attempt to sniff out alcohol or drugs on my breath. "I can't do this, Lon. Give this some thought." "I've given it a lot of thought. It's Christmas Eve. I need $350 for the family Christmas." He closed the case and said, "Sorry, man. I couldn't live with myself. It's your baby. I don't want to do this." "Okay," I said. "If it'll make you feel better, you can give me the money and throw in a replacement guitar from off the wall." He thought for a moment and said, "Okay." Then he walked over to the wall display of guitars and picked out a beautiful new Gibson J45. "Will this do?" I said, "Sure," I said, "if it'll make you feel better." Now, a Gibson J45 is a pretty fine instrument and represented an extremely generous trade. A few minutes later, I walked out of the store with $350 in cash and a new guitar. I headed straight to the antique store and purchased 2 items: a rocking chair for Constance that Constance had admired, and my magic sword. Constance and I spent the rest of the magic cash at the toy store. In the spring, I sold the Gibson to a friend, and for the next 29 years, I didn't own or play a guitar. I left the world of music and embarked on the study and practice of ceremonial magic and the associated arts. My sword, my store-bought, inexpensive Masonic ceremonial blade, has gotten quite a workout in the last 40 years. I wouldn't dream of trading it for a new one. It's my Excalibur, my Sting, my No-Thong. I carry it in dreams and vision. With it, I've done battle with dragons of my own nightmares, banished demons, and stormed the gates of heaven. My cheap Masonic sword is the material metaphor for my word. I needed it to find my voice, the voice of my own great work, for which my old Martin was merely a pre-echo. With my sword, I banish the demons of indolence, laziness, and invoke the gods of discipline and focus, and pierce the mysteries of my own soul until I cut through and found my magic voice, the word of my own great work. Every word I write, every sentence, every poem, every book that pours onto the page is my word. My sword is my tongue, my keyboard, my computer, my printer, my telephone, my network of brothers and sisters, friends and colleagues. What is your word? The answer to that question will hand you your magic sword. It is likely you'll try out many lesser swords before finding the true one. But once again, you have to start somewhere. And there's no time like the present. So that's my word on the magic sword. And Constance.
I'm not going to top that.
But,
let me get out my violin and a box of tissues.
Okay. No, but you brought me two things today that, tell me.
Well, usually people may misunderstand the sword as a weapon of war. No, if I'm going to lose my voice, I won't do it. It's a weapon of war. And they think they're going to, I've got my sword now, I can conquer the world. Anyway, and I have a 2-line poem, first of all, from St. Francis of Assisi, who went off to the Crusades. He saw terrible, wasteful carnage. He even met and became friends with Saladin.
Did you know that?
We saw a great documentary. Unbelievable, wonderful.
St. Francis was Saladin's.
They were buddies for
They
a
were
while.
buddies.
They stayed together for a while. He stayed with him. Anyway, and he came home with terrible, horrible PTSD, and he transformed his life. So here's a poem about the sword, a short one, very, very short poem, 2 lines. It's called Always. Oh, it's from Love Poems from God, translated by Daniel Ladinsky. Always from the child's hand. Always from the child's hand the sword should be removed. I think every nation is an infant.
Always from the child's hand the sword must be removed.
And something about the sword, I thought it's time for us all I shouldn't do this. To calm down and to seek peace in our personal lives, which leak over into everything else because things are snowballing around the world. And after the pandemic, people are dying to do something.
Yeah.
Let's hope they're not dying to do something. Okay. Anyway, swords represent peace, not in the arms salesman view as a deterrent, but on a different level as a tool for the practice of discrimination. You get to be the decider of how you want to feel and act in any conflicting situation. Usually you're only given 2 choices as to which side are you on. When the true result you want, peace, is never presented as a choice.
Well, yeah, Paul Case especially stressed the sword's a tool of discrimination. It cut one thing from another. It is a weapon of peace.
Can you talk about Lent? You?
Yes. Happy Ash Wednesday, everyone.
We're clergy. Can you tell?
Welcome to the parsonage this morning. Yes, you got
Wow.
and Ash Wednesday's the beginning of the Lenten season, where you always, at least when we were growing up, people, oh, I'm giving this up for Lent. I'm giving
I'm
that
not
up.
going to movies. I'm not eating candy, etc., etc.
Yeah, we're not going out to eat. No meat during Lent when we were kids.
Yeah.
Now it's no meat on Fridays. So
And it's not even that anymore. I don't know
Yeah.
what. I don't know what.
I think
They haven't excommunicated me, but I have not kept in contact with the Vatican.
so. And when you date, you can only get to first base.
He wants me to talk after that. Lent, but because I'm clergy, I thought right away, well, Lent shouldn't be thought of as some restrictive time imposed upon people by a patriarchal church. It was, of course, but a time to take a break from outside influences that clouded your mind and excesses necessary to survive winter. I mean, we ate like bears here all winter. I made cookies and put them in the freezer, and we had to have one cookie after every dinner. That's it. We only had one, but still, it was.
We are like bears.
We ate like bears, and it's time to sit and listen to your inner truth, to rest from outside input. There's a lot of electronical input. I mean, people watch a lot of movies. They can't pull themselves away from the electronics. You may think you're just giving up stuff, but you may be giving up stuff you don't really want or need anyway. And I have a anti-war and kind of give up stuff you don't need anyway poem from Meister Eckhart, the Christian,
Oh boy.
Christian mystic. Also from Love Poems from God,
Oh,
translated by
please,
Daniel
please,
Levinsky.
please read
This
it.
is a whole
Yeah.
page long, so I would understand it if you, you know. It's called An Insidious Idol. Commerce is supported by keeping the individual at odds with himself and others, by making us want more than we need, and offering credit to buy what refined senses do not want. The masses become shackled. I see how their eyes weep and are desperate. Of course they feel desperate for something, some remedy that a poor soul then feels needs to be bought. I find nothing more offensive than a God who would condemn human instincts in us that time in all its wonder have made perfect. I find nothing more destructive to the well-being of life than to support a God that makes you feel unworthy and in debt to it. I imagine erecting churches to such a strange God will assure endless wars that commerce loves. A God that could frighten is not a God, but an insidious idol and weapon in the hands of the insane. A God who talks of sin is worshipped by the infirm. I was once spiritually ill. We all pass through that, but one day the intelligence in my soul cured me. May it cure us all.
May it cure us all.
We all want things we don't need.
I like that, bringing the two together, the sort of discrimination. Use it to find out what it is we really don't need. Giving up things that you think is delightful just for self-sacrifice. That's old Aeon thinking.
Right.
That's
It's
stinking thinking.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not for self-sacrifice or giving up something. It's enhancing your life to do that.
Yeah. So, okay, that's it from the parsonage. That's it from the parsonage today.
There'll be another holy day later in the month.
So we've got all of Lent to blaspheme. Okay. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other.
And find peace.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the law, love under will.